We're still talking security here on Sunrise Daily, and we do know that there are many parts of our country that are challenged on this issue of security. We've just spoken to experts on the field, but what about those who have some responsibility to, help tackle the situation? This morning, we're speaking with Emmanuel Umar, who is the Commissioner of Local Government Affairs. Beg your pardon. He's Commissioner for Local Government, Chieftaincy Affairs and Internal Security. Mr. Omar, you're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
I wish I was speaking with you on something totally different.
Yeah.
But security is what we have been served, and that's what we have to deal with. Some time ago, we were able to have a conversation with the Secretary to the Government of your state, yes, in Niger State. Yeah. But shortly after he left, there were other incidences that came up. So it does look like it's not exactly been, it's not a huru yet in Niger State. The situation is still, quite challenging. And we saw that horrible tragedy that happened in a village, I think in Muya local government area, where we understand that terrorists had attacked a village. The villagers knew about it. They were running away from the terrorists. They saw a boat. One of the ways they could get away was to get into a boat. The boat was not serviceable. They knew that boat was a bad boat, but the terrorists wouldn't give up. So they kept chasing these villagers, who eventually got into the boat and tried to see if they could escape to the next village. And then the boat, of course, capsized. And at the last time, they were still talking about pulling bodies out of the river as a result of that tragedy. It was a literal situation of people being caught between the devil
and the deep blue sea.
Well,
like you rightly said, the security situation is still very challenging, especially with the spike of attacks, the recent attacks that happened. However, I know that some of the feedbacks we're getting from the communities of recent, there has been great security operations going on. I just pray that we'll be able to sustain this high level of operations. Now, back to the incident that you mentioned about, I think it was in Ashata community in Muya local government, where there was movement of bandits, terrorists were moving, and they breached into that community, and people again trying to run to safety. And the only available means that they had then was to cross over the river, and unfortunately that incident happened. Our hearts and prayers are with the family of the deceased.
Do you know how many people lost their lives in that incident?
As at the time of the incident, the report we received was about 8 bodies were recovered. Now, sometimes you get different reports, but the Marine Police were there, local government officials were there, state emergency management agencies too were there, and also the community people who send the reports to my office. It was 8 bodies that were able to recover. Now, no one can tell you the exact numbers of people who were on the board, except, after the incident, you start doing head counts, accountability, and so. But totally, there initially was about 12 persons were still missing, unaccounted for. But we've been able to get 8 bodies out, and we've spoken about that earlier. Now, talking about, again, you mentioned about also the security challenges that happened within that same week. It's disheartening, it's sad, and again, we begin to see what is even more troublesome is the coordinated attacks that is being carried out from those border states of Niger, Kaduna, Zamfara, Kebbi, Katsina, we see just within that those areas. So, but again, like I said, with the recent information we are receiving these few days, and also the coordinated operations that have been carried out by our armed forces, our police, and other unconventional security agencies, we're beginning to get good feedback.
Well, I'd like to be optimistic, but, I'd like to also talk about, diagnosing the problem.
Yes.
Niger State had been calm before now.
Very,
Even
very
though
peaceful.
some people said that, it was the calm of the graveyard. It was only a matter of time. If all of that war was happening in the northeast and spreading to the northwest, it was anything to go by, that calmness was, was a mirage of some sort. And it would seem that it's beginning to unravel, very sadly so. I'm just wondering, do we understand, as we speak, what the motive of those who have put Niger State under siege? What exactly is it? What do they want?
Okay, glad you said Niger State used to be very calm. It's one of the sleepy communities you have in Nigeria. I remember growing up in Niger on the streets, we moved freely and people traveled the length and breadth of the state. Now, the incidents that started happening, it started like herders, farmers' crisis, and it snowballed now to a large-scale act of terrorism, criminality, and whatnot. And a large part of that, because of Niger sharing border with states that have had one degree or the other challenges of security, like the Zamfara, the Kaduna, the Katsina, you discover that there is a thoroughfare. Now, this move from these communities that we share border with get into Niger, and because there are large forest, lost span of land,
yes,
and forest reservation, we have over 90 forest reservation in Niger State. And of course, Niger by landmass is more than the entire southeast. So now these terrorists take advantage of the terrain. And because our communities are spatial, you travel kilometers before you find a community. And the reason why people do that is because largely our people are farmers. So they take advantage of that. And that's why you begin to see all those activities going on. But again, the state governor has been very, very, very proactive. If you remember, he was the first to come out to say that, look, in my state, we have the footprints of the elements of terrorists. Boko Haram, he made mention about 2 years ago. And it's close to FCT. But then people thought he was an alarmist. And because we understood what was going on in the state, and we were putting on our mechanism to be sure that we'll be able to contain and mitigate against those challenges. So those are the things, again, that, instigate all this crisis.
You know why I ask? I mean, some people say it's not clear what they're trying to do, but why I ask is this: Niger State has land.
Correct.
I mean, you have 10% of the
total
entire
country
land that Nigeria has is domiciled in Niger State.
Correct.
So if these terrorists were looking for a land to settle, without even being noticed, it is very possible that they could have found land within Niger State and formed an entire community by themselves.
Correct.
But in recent times, they've taken to terrorizing these villages. We've seen entire villages destroyed. We've seen those who have been, displaced. So one has to ask, what exactly is it? Just to wreak terror? To what end?
It's criminal. It's purely an act of criminality. It's purely an act of criminality, taking advantage of our.
But even criminals have a motive. So, armed robbers, when they rob you, they want, they want economic advantage. So, Boko Haram, we know that they are an ideological group that they want to.
So you begin to see that it's purely because of. Let me just make it very clear. You understand? These acts of terrorism and criminality is purely because of, it's an enterprise, economic enterprise.
Okay.
Today, just imagine, I hate to use, because of stereotyping, I don't want to use a particular ethnicity towards that. When you have an individual who in a whole year could hardly have 200,000 naira, then today he can kidnap someone, take him hostage, and get 2 million naira. How do you expect him to, when he has the instrument of terror in his hands? So it's purely criminality. In fact, in some communities, and I keep saying this, in some communities, you have money in the hands of criminals, those bandits, those terrorists, than even in the formal sector. I know of a local government that in the entire of the bank in the local government, you don't have 10 million naira. But the terrorists that terrorize those axes have collected over 40 million naira from individuals. and also things that they've cattled away with. How do you expect that to stop? So it's purely an enterprise now. People, this group of criminals taking advantage of a system and cashing out of it. And that is just what is happening. But again, like I said, we're beginning to see an increase. I'm sure you've been following up events in Niger State, how God has been giving us victory. And it is because we had to change our strategy. His Excellency the Governor was very, very strong about it, that we must not give a foot in to any criminal in the state. And with his support to the law enforcement agencies, with the things we've done, the equipment, the vehicles, everything that he has brought on the table, we've been seeing successes from our law enforcement agency.
Well, you're in charge of local government, chieftaincy affairs and internal security.
Correct.
I think the two that concern us this morning, I'm really concerned about is local government. We've talked about, and then there's plenty of talk around how that tier of government is almost non-existent. And perhaps that's one of the reasons why we're seeing this breakdown of law and order. You've talked about how the villages and the communities in Niger are well spaced apart. And how that is a challenge when it comes to this issue of security, because the terrorists are taking advantage of it. So has there been any plan to revitalize the local governments to ensure that they're able to do their work as that third tier of government?
For sure. If you've been, like I said, if you've been following events in Niger State, you will realize that His Excellency the Governor has been very, very specific, because he sees the local government, like you rightly said, as a tier of government, and he granted, before even the federal government started talking about the autonomy, we started practicing that. And that's why you find out that we brought this multidimensional involvement and engagement in even the security issues. So the local government runs her own show, you understand, and also development projects and stuff like that that we take within that tier of government, and very, very effective. We've also involved, I thought you mentioned about the traditional institution, because it's still part of the local government. Also the engagement of our traditional institution. Now looking at bringing, that's why his governor in his own wisdom decided to bring security embedded into that ministry together. And so they have their own freedom of engagement, and they are fully engaged in whatever happens in that local level of government.
What results have we really seen? I mean, if this attack I talked about still happened just last week, can we really say that this is a question? I mean, we cannot exactly say it's proactivity. The proactive only happens when you anticipate something. When after it has happened and then you do it afterwards, that's certainly not proactivity.
Okay. Now, you have to also understand that how fluid the entire security situation is. Prior to this time, prior to now that we're talking, if you've been following events, you will see how our community engagement, the resilience from community people, how there was a breach for like 3, 4, 5 days, these bandits accessing into our community rose to the occasion. How we will be able to neutralize a large number of these bandits. We recovered some of the cattle that were lost to, even their weaponry, and motorcycles. Over 200 were neutralized in Niger at a particular time. And as yesterday, community, with the help of our unconventional security, which we term as the vigilante, the police, the army, we are also able to resist and also not only repel, but also neutralize some of the bandits that access our community. So there are some proactive things that have been done. There are engagement that we put with local community people based on our engagement. Recently, His Excellency signed the bill to reorganize our vigilante sector. And this vigilante, which is our unconventional security measures in the state, the community people are the ones involved in doing that. So there are successes that have been recorded. You know,
so essentially what you're saying is that you have empowered the communities to be able to respond to this security.
Absolutely. building resilience among the community.
It will mean that the communities, I mean, these vigilante groups will bear arms.
Oh, sure, our communities, yeah, we have a law backing that, but they operate under the Nigerian police force.
Okay.
Yes.
That is a very complicated way of looking at it.
Oh, no. So if you understand, arms in this country are prohibited items. And they carry what we call the allowed caliber of weapon. But again, they are under the Nigerian police force. They report to their divisions. It is the divisions that coordinated the operations. And so there is a law backing that in the state. And it is the proactiveness of the governor that brought us that, that law to be. So we have that, and it is community-based because it's only someone from the community that can be able to protect his community. And beside that, we have a fantastic way of getting information. Community let us know XYZ. We've seen bandits, they're operating in XYZ, they are doing this and that. We also brought into a policy where if you have any information about anyone, an informant or a bandit, you report to government and there is a reward for that. We call it reward for justice. So all these are things that the government has put in place. Okay.
So I'm wondering, do you pay this, is there an allowance for the vigilante?
Oh yeah, they get stipends. Because it's a voluntary work, it's part of our voluntarily policing strategy, so they get a stipends for that. Of course, you can't put someone on a work without a stipend.
How much is your stipend? I know it's a stipend. It's a stipend.
It's a stipend. I would prefer it just for some obvious reasons. Yeah.
I'm just, anyways, I'm just asking that because, as you said, it's
we can't pay them for their service.
Yes.
You understand? And it's just getting their buy-in into this. And most of them are even willing to do this because they feel it's an ownership of protecting their community. And they take pride in it.
So
but again,
why I asked that question is this. I know that there have been questions, I mean, there have been national conversations on state policing.
Correct.
This recently started again, constitutional amendment process. It was seen that state policing was not one of the things that was going to be considered. We do not know if there will be any inclusion along the way. But states like yours have since found that it doesn't make any sense to rely on the federal police for security in your state. Maybe as a general operating, reporting unit, but in terms of operations on the ground, you have since found that it was wiser to go down the vigilante route. And that if you had state police, perhaps, it might have been wiser for you to, deploy that there. I'm just trying to imagine, because it's a very fine line. 1 minute, they're vigilante. The next minute, they could be the people who you have a problem with. So is there a way to actually standardize what we currently have? That's looking ahead now, being proactive and looking ahead to ensure that we'll finance, and that's why I ask how much they're currently receiving as stipend. Will finance be one of the things that would constrain your effort in that regard?
Okay, well, it's important to just put it very clear that we are not saying that it's not wiser to depend on the national police because they have their role. But again, if you know Niger, like you said, Niger occupies like 10% of the entire landmass of the nation. The entire Niger state, the police deployment in the entire Niger state are not up to 5,000. Now, we're talking about a state that has between just less than 50 divisions. This is a state that it's bigger than the entire Southeast. So if in the entire Southeast Sudan we have about 5 states, or thereabout, you have 5 commissioners of police, you have 5 directors of SSS, you have probably 5 brigade commanders. Now in Niger, it's only 1 that you have. It's under-policed. So now coming about the vigilante is to bridge the gap. Now I know there is a conversation about state police, and there are both the for and against, and people are entitled to their own opinion. However, we've seen in our own state that bringing this unconventional security architecture, adding that voluntary policing sector into our entire security architecture, it's helping out. We are getting results. In some communities, you find out that the entire police, I know of a community that was attacked recently, the entire police, there were no more than 5. Now, when you have the vigilante, they help. But again, it comes with its own challenges. Agreed. But that's why I started by saying that we are reorganizing it. We've reorganized it towards getting the right people for the right job. And I think we're making headway out of it.
Well, it wasn't quite the question I was asking, but
Please go ahead.
Let me take this to Lagos, because I understand that my colleagues have questions for you. Gentlemen.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. Let me just follow up on this talk about just how many policemen you have in the state. I know the Governor Bello, has spoken about this quite a number of times. In fact, the last time was 4,000. So if you say below 5,000, maybe there's been some addition. And I know maybe you have made requests for more. What exactly is holding whoever should act back on ensuring that Niger State has enough policemen? I hear it's meant to be 14,000. I'm not quite sure, but what is holding that back?
Well, it's for the leadership of the Nigerian police force to be able to explain. I know they too have their own challenges about manpower, and I also you said 14,000. I doubt if it is up to 14,000. 14,000 is quite a lot number of strength there. But again, like I said, it is up to the states, the Nigerian police force. I know they have their own challenges, but we desire to have more additional security forces in the state. We're beginning to see increased number of security men, but again, in as much as we know it is not possible to have boots on the ground everywhere, we need additional law enforcement agencies in the state.
Okay, so 2 questions because of our time. One, this attack on Shaitu village in Munya local government area, have you been able to arrest those responsible? That attack happened days ago last week.
Not to my knowledge, but I know that as we speak now, there has been security operation going on in that local government and some other local governments that share border with Munya local government. And I know our law enforcement have been making, like I said, some successes. It's the armed forces, which involve the Nigerian Air Force, the Army, the police, civil defense, and the DSS. They've been doing their best to ensure that those who breach our security, those who attack our communities, are brought to book. That I know. And the feedback I got yesterday in some of those communities is very impressive. Now, again, I'm not saying that we've been able to resolve all those security challenges, but again, there are remarkable successes that we've recorded.
Just a quick one, Mr. Umar. There's some question that Mark asked earlier, and something that you also said also raised this on my mind, and that's talking about community engagement. You said earlier that, someone who was having difficulty raising money and all of a sudden did a little kidnapping, got 2 million naira. And then Mark was asking the question around how much do you pay these guys, and you said that, they get stipends. So for me, that raises a flag. And I'm just wondering the level of community engagement that will help you in Niger State get security information, intelligence information, that in the event that any of the operatives you have on ground, these volunteers that you have on ground, is compromised, what's the mechanism to report to government in order for the situation not to get worse?
Okay. So, like I started by saying that we did a reorganization of the entire security architecture, including the vigilante. Now, again, yes, it's possible for compromises. However, most of our vigilante went through selection processes, and these selection processes are from the district level from ward level to the district level to the state level, and these are people who the communities know. We've had cases where some vigilantes were reported that they were seen or involved in one crime or the other, and the law took its course on them. So it's not the vigilante who are who are voluntarily are not doing that because of the money that they get. They are doing that because of ownership of their community. They feel they own this community and they will not allow this bandit to change their lifestyle. And to be honest, we've seen commitment. Those are parts of the places where we even get inspiration. We are more motivated to do more in our fight against insurgency in the state. So the community people understand it, their role, and they are not doing it because of the money, but because they just want to make their community safe. But again, like I said, we give them stipends. We also take care of their basic needs. You can't send someone for operation without providing him the tools that he needs for the operation. So we're doing that. Money is not what they're putting in front of them, but the commitment to their community.
Can I ask what the markers for success are? How will the Niger state government rate itself as being successful with the measures that it's put in place?
First is, now there are certain communities that we know that they've been consistent attack in those communities. As of today, because of the measures that we've put in place, there is a scale down in those attacks in those communities. We've also been able to arrest large number of informants. Besides that, our law enforcement in their operations have been able to neutralize a lot of them. And we've taken away some of their equipment, some of the weapons that they use. So those are part of our success stories. We've built confidence in our community people to come out to say that, look, we are partners in this. And if you've been following Niger very well, you will discover that that before now, the attacks were both the southern part and the northern part. But gradually now, it's now moved towards the southern parts, towards borders that we have with some few other states. So those are the things we are looking into. But again, like I said, we are not out of the woods yet, but we will keep to do, we are willing and ready and available to do more. And some of the this successes is credited to the commitments we've seen in our law enforcement agencies, our military, our police, the commitment we've also seen in His Excellency the Governor providing the tools that we need. He purchased over 350-something vehicles to support these operations, over 2,000 motorcycles. Now, you see how heavily, I'm not talking about other equipments that we purchased for the law enforcement, both the technical support, the work we do for the operatives. So all these are things we put in place.
Well, we certainly will keep our eyes on Niger State. Please. And we'll ensure that we hold you to your word. I do not know, when I asked for a success marker, what I wanted was what the target was. But you've talked about the progress that you've made, which I will have to make do with for now. And hopefully you'll be back to update us in terms of, what exactly is happening in the state. We have to thank you for coming on Sunrise Today this morning. Mr. Emmanuel Umar is Commissioner, Ministry of Local Government, Chieftaincy Affairs and Internal Security.
Thank you very much. And it's important to just say this, that we all are in this together.
Indeed.
And we want to thank you very much for all the support we're receiving. And these are common criminals, and it's a fight for all of us. So by God's grace, very soon this thing will be the thing of the past. Thank you very much for having me.